2 years ago, after I became wheelchair-bound due to an accident, my husband and mother-in-law's attitudes became noticeably harsh. I hate to say this, but could you leave this house? One night, I couldn't comprehend the meaning of my husband's sudden words. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. Mother and I talked it over and decided. By asking me to leave, do you mean you want a divorce? Yes, that's right. I've been thinking about it for a long time. I don't need you anymore since you can't earn money. He spat out those words like venom while clenching his fists. I understand. Thank you for everything. And thank you for leaving nothing behind. That's all I said before I left my seat. It would be a while before they understood the meaning of these words. I'm Aita. It's been 10 years since I joined my current company after graduating from university. Well then, I'll be heading out. Good work today. Good work. I closed my laptop and stood up from my desk. Looking at the clock by the window, about 2 hours had passed since regular working hours. The afternoon meeting had run long, and I'd spent time after hours preparing meeting materials and responding to emails, which took longer than expected. I took the elevator down to the first floor and left the office. Through the building's glass automatic doors, I could see it was already dark outside. As I headed to the nearest station past the company gates, checking train schedules on my smartphone, I noticed 2 employees from my husband Bendek's department walking ahead toward the same station. I wonder if Bendek is home already. Recently, we'd stopped talking about work at home, so I didn't even know if he was busy at work. More precisely, whenever workplace topics came up, Bendek's mood would noticeably sour, so we naturally stopped discussing it. Swaying on the train ride home, I gazed at the scenery passing by the window. When Bendek and I were dating, we often coordinated our schedules to go home together, but for the past year or two, our schedules have been completely different. My eyes caught a young couple standing near the door. They looked like college students, and I could hear them chatting happily about a movie they'd recently seen. The happy scene overlapped with memories from my past. I shut my eyes tight to suppress the emotions that suddenly welled up. I'm home. I called out after opening the front door. Looking at the shoes lined up in the entryway as I took off my pumps, it seemed everyone else was already home. I heard the living room door open behind me and the patter of slippers approaching. Welcome home, Aita. You're late again today. I'm home, Mother. I'll start preparing dinner right away. Oh, don't rush. You must be tired from overtime? No, not really. Today's afternoon meeting ran long, but things are starting to wrap up. I responded cheerfully as I headed to the living room with my mother-in-law, Imelda. After marriage, Bendek and I had lived by ourselves, but when his father was hospitalized due to illness last year, we moved to Bendek's family home and now live as a family of 4 with his parents. Welcome home, Aita. Good work today. I'm home. My father-in-law, who was reading the newspaper on the living room sofa, greeted me gently. Last year, he had collapsed from an acute subarachnoid hemorrhage and underwent emergency surgery. Though his condition was critical at one point, after post-discharge rehabilitation, he can now live normally. With his gentle personality and approachable nature, I had liked him since our first meeting before the marriage. Having served as an accounting department manager until retirement, he was knowledgeable about finance and often taught me tips about household financial management. After finishing dinner preparations, we all gathered around the table. Sarah came to visit the other day for lunch, and I was surprised at how big her daughter has gotten. Is that so? They say other people's children seem to grow especially fast. Sarah is still as beautiful as ever, and having children really does give a woman that maternal, feminine air. Yes, that's true. Sarah is Imelda's sister's daughter, Bendek's cousin. Imelda frequently expresses disappointment about Bendek and me not having children. She apparently disapproves of me working after marriage, and whenever we meet, she implies things like, "Quit your job and give me grandchildren soon," which honestly makes me uncomfortable with her. Since we started living together, especially on days when I work late, she finds ways to bring up the topic. "Aita, I think you could have chosen to have children a little earlier, but well, I suppose it can't be helped since you're busy with work." While nodding vaguely, I glanced sideways at Bendek, who continued eating silently without looking at me. Bendek and I were in the same cohort at the company, and we married in our second year of dating. He had wanted me to become a full-time housewife if we had children, but in the 10 years since our marriage, we haven't been blessed with any, and we've both continued working since the beginning. Both Bendek and I desperately wanted children, and we tried everything possible, from traditional medicine to medical tests, but pregnancy never happened. Though there's loneliness, I thought living just as a couple could be good too, and I threw myself into work instead. But somewhere along the way, I began to feel an invisible wall between Bendek and me. Though we chose to marry and had walked together trying to make each other happy, a gradual temperature difference developed in our relationship. I think it probably started when Bendek began struggling with work. He never said anything to me, but I heard from colleagues in his department that he seemed troubled about not performing as well as others in his cohort. Bendek has always had a gentle personality and isn't good with pressure, plus he tends to be hard on himself. Even without him saying anything, I could tell he was feeling rushed and irritated by the situation. However, when I gently tried to discuss it, he would only say, "I'm fine. Don't worry," and stubbornly refused to confide in me. Since he maintained this stance of not sharing his troubles with me, I couldn't force the conversation, and it was frustratingly impossible to be of help to him. Still, on our days off, we would travel together or spend relaxing time at home, cherishing our time together. When I became emotionally exhausted from unsuccessful attempts at conception, he supported me silently. So even if I couldn't be the force to solve Bendek's current troubles, I intended to stay by his side and create times of peace for his heart. The turning point was probably when I received my promotion notice. My achievements in a project I participated in were recognized, and my promotion speed was among the fastest in our cohort. I can't forget Bendek's expression when he said, "That's amazing. Congratulations, Aita." Fighting back tears, all I could say was, "Thank you." As my work became busier, the distance between Bendek and me only grew. Eventually, we spent less time together, had fewer conversations, and by the time my income surpassed Bendek's, we couldn't even look each other in the eye. Watching Bendek's back as he left the table without saying a word after finishing his meal, I wondered if back then, I hadn't been afraid of rejection and had tried harder to be his support, could we have built a different kind of relationship? When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was the bright white fluorescent light. After blinking several times, I shifted my gaze around. I appeared to be lying in a hospital bed. Looking down, I saw an N4 connected to my arm, and both legs were wrapped in multiple layers of bandages and casts. The moment I tried to move, an unprecedented pain shot through my entire body. Tears welled up from the intense pain. My whole body felt as heavy as lead, and it seemed impossible to move. What had happened? I tried to trace my memories from just before waking up. This morning, I had gone to work at the usual time, finished meetings and reports, and left work on time for the first time in a while. I had left the company and was heading to the station, and then I suddenly remembered. On the road to the station, busier than usual with rush hour traffic, there was a sudden screeching sound of emergency brakes behind me, and the moment I turned around, impact coursed through my entire body. As I realized I had been hit by a car, fear welled up along with the pain throughout my body. What condition was my body in now? Footsteps approached, and suddenly the curtain around my bed opened.
Ah,
You're awake. Don't try to get up yet. A young female nurse called out to me in a flustered manner. You must be confused, but the doctor will explain everything soon. Please stay still. Oh, yes. The nurse hurried out after saying this. A few minutes later, the doctor came and told me about the circumstances of my accident and the surgery. Apparently, a truck driver who had fallen asleep at the wheel had crashed into the sidewalk, and unfortunately, I had been hit from behind. I was rushed to this hospital immediately after the accident, and about half a day had passed since the successful surgery. What about contacting my family? We've already informed your husband and his parents, with whom you live, about your accident and the successful completion of surgery. However, they all seem to be out and unable to come immediately. I see. Thank you. Bendek was away on a business trip, and his parents were on an overseas trip together since last week. From the doctor's tone, I could somewhat imagine their reactions when they were contacted. Even considering they were away, it probably wasn't the kind of reaction you'd expect when told that a dear family member had been in an accident. At least, it seemed to have been enough to make others hesitant to describe their response directly. I laughed self-deprecatingly as I imagined Bendek's reaction to being informed of my accident. I just couldn't picture him being worried about me. According to the doctor's subsequent explanation, while my condition wasn't life-threatening, the damage to both my legs was particularly severe, and there was little chance I would be able to walk again. As I listened to the explanation, it felt like I was hearing about someone else's body rather than my own. Bendek visited the hospital 3 days after the accident. I was surprised by his deeply pained expression when he saw me lying in bed with injuries all over my body. Sorry I'm late. No, don't worry about it. I'm sorry it happened while you were on your business trip. Our conversation was awkward, as we hadn't talked in a long time. The conversation died there with both of us looking down, and Bendek left saying he would go talk to the doctor. I couldn't call out to him and could only watch him leave. 2.5 years have passed since my accident. The injuries to my legs from the accident left me permanently disabled, forcing me to live in a wheelchair. Since the accident happened during my commute, I was able to keep my job, but it was difficult to work the same way as before, and I resigned about 6 months ago. Since retiring, I've been staying at home, but there are some things that concern me lately. One is that Imelda's attitude toward me has become noticeably harsher than before. Aita. Do you have a moment? Yes, that's fine. I'm about to go out, but could I ask you to fold the laundry? It's just folding, and you can do that even if you can't move your legs, right? Yes. Have a safe trip. Well then, I'll leave it to you. Since I started spending my days at home, her snide remarks have increased. She seems to dislike having her son's wife staying at home without working, and now every time we meet, her requests come paired with sarcasm. I sighed while folding the laundry. The other concern is about Bendek's work situation. According to former colleagues, Bendek has become even more isolated in the workplace than before. He's been surpassed in work performance by his subordinates and is being treated like a delicate matter by those around him. While he often shut himself in his room after returning from work, lately he's been taking his frustrations out on me more frequently. You've got it easy, Aita. You don't have to worry about workplace relationships anymore, and you can live without working. Mother told me you just spend all day doing nothing? Man, I wish I could live like that just once. The Bendek who continues to throw such sarcastic remarks at me no longer shows any trace of his former kindness. I just felt lonely seeing how much Bendek had changed. I hate to say this, but could you leave this house? One night, I couldn't comprehend the meaning of Bendek's sudden words for a moment. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. Mother and I talked it over and decided. I looked at Imelda sitting next to Bendek. Aita, since you quit your job, you haven't contributed to living expenses or helped around the house, you've just been staying here. Frankly, having you here any longer is a nuisance. Don't you think it's presumptuous to keep living in someone else's house while being completely useless? Imelda continued, looking at me triumphantly. Bendek remained silent, not looking at me. Even though Bendek is having a hard time at work. Just because you're married doesn't mean he has any obligation to keep supporting you. I asked the downcast Bendek, by asking me to leave, do you mean you want a divorce? Yes, that's right. I've been thinking about it for a long time. After being together for so long, do you have no feelings left for me at all? How could I? Not at all. Bendek started speaking as if a dam had broken. Do you know how miserable you make me feel every time I see your face? You must have been looking down on me too, right? Every day, thinking you're better than me, basking in your sense of superiority. The threads we had woven together since we met seemed to be breaking one by one. Before, I put up with it because you were contributing money to the household, but now it's different. Now you're just a useless person with no job and no money. Bendek spat out the words like venom while clenching his fists. I don't need you anymore since you can't earn money. The last thread broke with an audible snap. I understand. Bendek looked at me for the first time. However, I have one condition. All divorce arrangements and procedures must be handled through lawyers. If you can agree to this, I'll pack my things and leave this week. Yes, that's fine. Right, Bendek? Bendek nodded silently. Well then, that's that. Bendek. Bendek's shoulders jerked as he looked at me. Thank you for everything. And thank you for leaving nothing behind. That's all I said before I left my seat. A few days after I left the house, my phone rang with an incoming call from Bendek. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. Hello? Aita. I'm sorry, please come back? What's this all of a sudden? Father told me that even after you quit your job, you were still covering the living expenses. You've been investing since you were working, right? Now you're earning enough in dividends to cover living expenses? Yes, that's right. So what? I left all the household finances to you and Father, so I didn't know anything. I thought we were using my income for living expenses, but it was almost all covered by your income, wasn't it? I really think I said terrible things. I'm sorry. After we got married and combined our finances, I had started investing with my income. Originally encouraged by my father-in-law, I had only consulted with him about household management and investments. So, what do you want me to do if I come back? Well, Father says that with just my income, we absolutely can't maintain the same lifestyle as before. And I'm not confident I can keep my current job much longer. So, are you saying you want me to come back just to make things easier for you all? How can you say such things so casually? I could tell Bendek held his breath on the other end of the phone. I didn't say anything all this time because even though your feelings weren't the same as before, I believed somewhere deep down you still cared about me. But you're not the Bendek I fell in love with anymore. That's not true. Don't say anything more. All my feelings for you disappeared when we talked the other day. I'm sorry, but I don't care what happens to any of you anymore. Thank you for not leaving anything behind, no trust, no memories, nothing. Wait, Aita. Please, forgive me. The divorce arrangements and procedures will all be handled through lawyers. Don't contact me again. That's all I said before hanging up, and I refused all contact after that. Subsequently, the divorce proceedings progressed smoothly, and I completely severed ties with Bendek. The only person I still keep in touch with is my father-in-law. So, you haven't had any financial difficulties since leaving Bendek? No, I haven't had any problems so far. That's good to hear. We caused you so much trouble. When I heard what my son and wife had done, I couldn't help but yell at them. And the way they had been treating you for so long was something I should never have overlooked as family. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything. No, Father, please don't worry about it. If anything, I should apologize for causing you trouble. Since I left, there have been constant disputes at the house, I hear. Even after losing my income, Bendek and Imelda couldn't lower their standard of living and continued to waste money, eventually even mortgaging their household belongings and falling into debt. My father-in-law finally lost patience with his wife and son who showed no signs of changing their ways, and he recently divorced as well. This has become a good opportunity to reassess my life. I can live comfortably with my current lifestyle, and I want to try new things too, I said, smiling brightly.